We are people who love the Torah, and we're talking about our Torah lifestyle. Hi, I'm Mark David Smith, and this is Superheroes for the Messianic Lifestyle. On June 15, 2013, Chris Matthews did his first show on Lamb Radio. That's 5.5 years ago. Lamb's only been around for a little over 6 years, so Chris was one of our patriarchs. Let's put it that way. Hi, Chris. How you doing, man?
So, did you say Juneteenth, 2015?
June 15, 2013.
Oh, okay. Because my kids always laugh and joke about Juneteenth, so I figured it must have been Juneteenth.
And that show was Kashuak. I'll never forget that. That was great because hardball with Chris Matthews, and here we go. So why not just do it in Hebrew? That was great, brother.
That was actually Pam's suggestion. We were trying to come up with, well, what do we call this? Because I don't really have so much of a format. I love expressing and passing on the things that I've learned and the things I do. And Mark, you know this after how many years we've known each other, that I'll ask tough questions just to make sure that I'm thinking correctly. It's not trying to challenge you or the audience or anybody else. That it's, wait a minute, did I think about that right whenever I made that decision? What about this?
Yes.
And so Pam said, well, you're always laughing and joking. You're not that Chris Matthews on Hardball. And what about Kashuak? And I said, well, Kashuak, I don't know Hebrew as well as my family does. And she said, yeah, hardball. It basically means a hardball or a hard question. And I said, that's perfect. And so that's how that started.
It worked really well, and I didn't check to see how long you were on, but it was a couple of years. It was over a year, and because you were in the military at that time, you were off and on, and we did a few shows and had other people on the show, so it was good. And you always had your family, your sons join you one way or another in the shows.
Yep.
So
yeah. We've always tried to include the kids in any of the studies. Some of them, kids are kids. They get bored with it, or they feel embarrassed because they don't know what to ask. And I think that's a lot of anybody that's approaching anything about Judaism or Messianics. Once you start going past what you're comfortable with and you start delving into something new, you almost get that embarrassment feeling of, I don't even know if I should ask this, or, well, that doesn't sound right, but there's something about it that rings true, and you don't know how to ask a question. And that's always tough. It really is. And so I recognize that with all of my sons. We've got 5 sons, and each one of them, they'll ask some pretty interesting questions. I mean, the youngest one, you saw Isaiah, and he's 10 years old now, and he came up to me a month or two ago, and he said, Papa, do you know why dinosaurs don't talk? And now the kid is into dinosaurs. He wants to be a paleontologist. I mean, seriously. So he's all about dinosaurs, and he can tell you all the ages of the earth and the rocks and what dinosaur lived when, and et cetera, et cetera. And I said, I don't know, Isaiah. Why don't dinosaurs talk? And he says, because they're dead.
Oh, that's great.
So those are the kind of questions I get at home.
Oh, that's really good. That's really good. I love it. So now your youngest is 10, and what, you have like 23 boys, I think now.
Pretty close to it. Yeah, pretty close. We got 5 boys. Jesse, which is on the show with 2.5 Opinions, and Kashuak, and he always pops in and out when he can. He's the oldest, and then Joshua, who just got married. He's been married over a year now. And then we've got 3 more, and The joke in my every unit I've ever been in, the joke was if Pam was pregnant, we knew we were getting deployed because half of them were born while I was overseas. So
Is that right?
It's tough being an Army wife, let me tell you. You know, there's something about the strength and the fortitude of a military wife.
How interesting. I do remember you talking about that before. And speaking of remembering, you and I have been friends for quite some time. I do remember when I moved my family from Kansas to Oklahoma. Even before that, we had been going back and forth to uh, B'nai Shalom and several other different places up there. And we had met and then got together. And then when I moved up there, you and I got together quite a bit and had Bible studies and all kinds of different things.
Yeah.
And at Sukkot, we would hang out and the whole families would hang out. And so it was great. Those were great days back then.
They really were. I mean, we really miss and loved all of just the environment and the openness and the love of those Chandler Sukkots. Those were always wonderful. We've been to so many others, and it's not that they pale in any way. Every one of them has their own flavor, their own taste, their own style,
their own personality.
Yeah, and so we took several years, and we would go from one to another just to see what other groups were like and what they were doing and how they were doing. So yeah, we those were really fun times.
Well, what kind of a belief system did you grow up in?
That's a very good question. And I don't think that we're unique in any way. My wife was raised Pentecostal holiness, which meant long hair, long sleeves, long dresses, and long faces. But they would dance and shout and do the whole Pentecostal holiness, or what we really be. I think they're really more non-denominational now, or Assembly of God, that style. My mother was raised Assembly of God, but her grandmother and her mother were Jewish in background, and their approach to the Bible was always just a little bit different than what we always heard on any given Sunday. And man, I'll tell you, we were the family that was there Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. And then we'd clean the church on Friday night or Saturday and start all over again for the next week. So that's kind of the family that I was raised in. Mom always had a little bit different approach, though. And Dad was raised Methodist, and they agreed on Baptist, Southern Baptist. Throughout my life, there had the huge rebellious time period like a lot of kids do. And I was caught up in a pretty rough crowd, and I had to make a clean break. So I decided one day that I'm going to move to Oklahoma, go to Oklahoma Baptist University. So I sold everything I owned, whatever I couldn't sell or give away. I loaded up on my motorcycle and drove up onto the dean's door and knocked on the door and said, I want to go to school here. Now, Mark, my hair wasn't quite as long as yours, but it was pretty close. And I had an earring in my hair, and my bike was loaded down right out inside. And he said, enroll into what, son? And I kind of gave him a little bit of the story of, I got to make a break in my life of the entire lifestyle that I was in. And my only goal is to learn about my God. And since I had a Southern Baptist preacher, this is all I know. What can you do for me? Rolled into OBU, and after several years of good learning, I mean, I tell you what, that is a great school. I do highly recommend it for anybody. It's a great school. But if you're going there for theology, then you must You must understand, you're going there for their doctrine, not necessarily theology. And they're very strong on doctrine. After 3 years there, just found out that a private school like that was way too expensive for me paying it and trying to work and everything else. So went off into other ventures, went back to Southern Nazarene University, completed my degree. In the meantime, I was taking courses at Rhema Bible College because, after all, Oklahoma's the belt buckle of the Bible Belt. And I'm still chasing God. I wanted to learn about God. Could care less about your doctrine or your beliefs. I want to know what is God and what is truth. Multiple colleges and universities and places of study, and none of them filled the niche for me. That's really all it was, is they never filled the niche. My wife and I were married in the mid 80s, and I said, here's the wedding that I want. And it was very strange. Both of our families thought we were nuts. We were crazy. But it was under a huppah, and we went and bought a Kiddush cup. We didn't know. We didn't know what we were doing. We were stumbling in the dark here. And the local Jews in Oklahoma, there's a saying in the Jewish community, they always ask, are you Jewish? And the expected answer is, as much as one can be in Oklahoma. And so the Jewish community, we didn't recognize it at the time, but they were very, very hands-off, and they would push against us constantly. We didn't understand that at the time. Came across, at the time, he was a rather hefty individual, he and his wonderful Jewish wife, and that was Charles and Marion Stallsworth, and that was in the 80s. And they had a little congregation that was going through very difficult times, because, again, Messianic, there was no such thing as that in the 80s. I mean, you just didn't see it. Other than the Worldwide Church of God, you just didn't have anything that embraced something that was Hebraic or Jewish in the slightest. So we learned a little bit from them, and moved out into the boondocks, and struggled and strived to find our grounding, our wind in what direction we wanted to go. And there was a lot of striving and struggling through much of that time. After Joshua, the second born, was born, and I'd been deployed once or twice, and I came home and I told my wife, I said, I can't stand it anymore. We're going to start keeping Sabbath. Now, again, Pentecostal holiness background, Southern Baptist background. And her immediate response was, that means we have to keep the whole law, don't you? And I thought, what is that coming from? If you start keeping any of the commandments, you have to keep all of them. How in the world are we going to do this? And she was very, very much opposed to such an idea. She loves God. She loves, she's my wife. She's a wonderful person, very giving, very caring, very merciful, very headstrong, like all wives are. And I said, well, honey, I've got to do it for myself then. And before I knew it, she was leading the way in keeping Sabbath, and she was studying and reading all that she could. And then one thing after another, I was a coach of a football team, and one of the kids on the team, his mother said, well, you guys sound an awful lot like this other group. It's called, and she's fumbling around for it. The guy's name is Monty. I think he's a Jew, but he's a Christian. So and I said, is this another Jews for Jesus? No, not like that. And you got to understand, Mark, I come from California. My Southern Baptist upbringing is California. My cultural mix is from California. So we were very much aware of Jews for Jesus. And though the Christians really loved the Jews for Jesus, you might as well put Jesus back up on the cross to talk to a Jew from a Jews for Jesus perspective. Very offensive to the Jewish communities in California during the 70s and 80s. And she said, no, not like that. But and she gave me the address, and we went and visited, and it was B'nai Shalom. And they were in what was that? It was one of the churches they were in at the time. I don't remember.
Shekinah.
Yeah, Shekinah. And so we were going there for a while, and I said, wow, this kind of makes sense, Pam. And my wife just jumped all over it. She couldn't get enough of it.
That's where we met, was in that church.
Yeah. And it was the Shekinah Glory is the church.
Shekinah Glory, that's right. Shekinah Glory.
I know, but it's Oklahoma, so you say Shekinah. And I was getting ready to deploy yet again, and it was going to be my first trip to Afghanistan. And all of a sudden there was troubles and rumblings in the congregation. And that was one of the really big splits, breakups, whatever. Every group goes through these things from time to time. And I was really concerned about leaving my wife and my sons, and she really was about to deliver, and it was one of those where she delivered. I was able to come back on leave. We were in a training area, and I was able to come back on leave when she delivered, and then I'm deployed. And that's with Caleb. And I was nervous because I'm leaving my wife with this brand new group that we're just now starting to get to know, and they're in a breakup. What in the world? I mean, you can't feel more insecure about spiritual and religious things when you're getting ready to leave for a year, and the church, the congregation, the group is going through problems like that. Sure enough, they have
supposed to be watching over your wife and helping with the family while you're gone. Yeah.
Right. So who's going to help with her and watch out for her, because the things that were going on. Things worked out. Come back, and I want to say it was like months after we came back, and they said, well, we've got yet another family. It seemed like everybody from Kansas was migrating to Oklahoma, or from New Mexico to Oklahoma, or even from Texas. And it seemed like that first year I was back from that deployment, the boys and I came up and helped you guys as much as we could. I had to leave early. I don't know if you remember any of that. I do. There were so many people there, Mark, that we didn't even, I don't even think we even met whenever you were moving down there.
Yeah, the early days it's hard to remember where we were and what we were doing, and that.
And then other families were moving in, and the congregation was growing again. And there was a new life and a new feel to things. And as we're growing, just my entire family, we could not get enough of learning. It was like somebody had opened the book to us and taught us how to read for the first time. We were learning so much.
Same here.
And it just continued. And so with us, it came to that point of, well, there seems to be, and this is our opinion, straight out our opinion, there seems to be this love affair, but yet rejection of things Jewish within the Messianic that we've come to meet. We'll gobble up these things because they look Jewish, they sound Jewish, we'll use Hebrew words, but these other things we're not even going to listen to. And I was wanting to learn. Again, I'm still just like you, Mark, the mindset of I'm not against your opinion. I'm chasing the truth. I don't know what that is just yet. I don't know if I ever will know, but that's what I'm chasing. That's what I want to know. So it's not as much of a rejection of you as an individual, you as a group, as much as I'm weighing the balances here, and the evidence weighs this direction, so I'm going this direction. It doesn't mean I'm rejecting anybody or anything. And so that's happened over the past 5 or 6 years for us. And so we'd be asked pointed questions from certain groups. We were looking at things and taking a very strong Jewish approach to everything in our life. Now that when I say Jewish approach, I got to be careful, because there's American rabbinics, and then there's other rabbinics, and there's things that are happening in Israel and things that happen outside of Israel. Throughout all this time, Mark, my mother, she moved to Oklahoma. She remarried, and she started sponsoring Israeli students, and she'd put them up in her house. She had the money for that. And she did a lot of sponsoring. Through that, we met several friends, Israelis, Sabras. Some of them were Sabras, some of them made Aliyah, and got to know the families. And so Pam and I would go to Israel, and we'd visit, and we'd live, spend time with those families. And it was very interesting. They thought we were ultra Orthodox. And you've been in our house, you've met our kids, you know how we live. And they were scared. A lot of those families were really nervous and scared around us. Are we doing Shabbat right? I mean, they'd ask us that. And we're like, are you kidding me? I don't care how you do Shabbat. And when you're in Israel, just Shabbatin is Shabbatin. I don't care what you do.
Amen. Amen.
We're caught up into the spiritualness of it. And they're worried, are we doing this right for you guys? And that it gave us a different feeling. And so we understand, and have come to understand, the gevura, the pushback on religious people in Israel. And most people that we met, and we've got some friends that have moved back from Israel to America, and they're non-religious in the slightest, but they still will keep Shabbat. They still will recognize certain things. And it's very, very funny and interesting how that old adage of more so that we kept Shabbat, but Shabbat kept us. And I see that in the lives of the non-religious in Israel. And I've learned such a great deal of wisdom from some of these people. And it confounds me, because when I see my troubles and my issues and my problems and the infighting and the absolutes that we want to put on ourselves and on our children and on others within various communities and various congregations, I'm amazed. I truly am amazed of, wow, really? 1 house, 2 house, 5 house? Is that so important that if you don't believe this way, if you don't do whatever on Shabbat, or we've gone through the whole calendar thing, Mark, over and over, lunar Sabbaths, all of it.
I've always been, hey, each one of us individually are going to have to stand buck naked before God and give an account. How in the world can I possibly put anything on you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's so true. And I don't want to say that just because I don't agree with you means a divisive point, but sometimes we see that things will become divisive of their own. And what I mean by that is when you start keeping the dietary laws, whichever ones you want to keep, and you start keeping them, you'll notice that a lot of your friends are now going to go away. You start keeping Sabbath, and you're not joining them on their things on Friday night or on Saturday. They start going away. Your actions will become that divisive point. And we've seen that in just about every congregation, every group we've been in. Is I didn't say you can't eat a cheeseburger. I'm just saying that we don't eat cheese on our meat, okay? It doesn't mean you can't. We just don't mix dairy and meat together. Do whatever you want to. And then suddenly you feel the animosity, or you feel the standoffishness. And I'm like, oh, wow, I don't want my lifestyle to be an offense to you. But wasn't it Paul that told us that if it's offensive to your brother, don't eat it? Then why does my not eating it now offensive to you? That we flipped Paul's teaching on its
Right.
head by now.
That's exactly right. Sure.
So yeah, so right now, Mark, we're out here swimming in an area of Oklahoma that has been known for skinheads. It's an odd area, and I don't know why, where, or how we ended up where we did in Oklahoma. We felt like it was right, and we've been here now 10 years. We still love it, but we're so far removed from any community, any group, whether it be the temple, the Chabad house, or another Messianic congregation. We're so far away now that I know what so many others that would log in because of you, Mark, would log in and listen to Monty Judah, would log in and follow the different things that are going on where the large crowds could gather. We fully understand that now, and we see it more than ever, and it's tough. It can be really tough because you're pulled from so many different directions. Your children, your grandchildren, your brothers, your family. We're just past Hanukkah, and now coming up into the other the other holiday, and we have taught our children, do not be offensive at Christmas time. Do not be offensive. If someone says Merry Christmas, they're just trying to be nice to you. That doesn't mean that
don't be offensive and don't be offended.
Yeah, don't be offended. They're just it's their way of saying hello, I love you. Take it. Say, well, same to you. Well, happy holidays.
Yeah,
whatever.
sure.
Don't take offense when none was meant. And but when you're out there on your own, living in Podunk, wherever, you feel tossed and tangled, and at times you start questioning yourself. Did I make the right decision? Am I on the right path? And if you truly are searching for the truth, you will always ask yourself, am I on the right path? I love reading the extra biblical stories about the patriarchs, and some of their stories, even though it's very, very Jewish and written by Jews, and Jews are very careful not to cause any offense to the patriarchs. But you can see underneath, bubbling up inside, is Jacob questioned. He wasn't absolute all the time. He wasn't the rock. Abraham had issues. He had problems. Isaac, that guy was a mess half of his life. Could you imagine being born and raised? You're the son of promise. Could you imagine the weight, the psychology that's going into this guy's mind? I mean, and you start putting human traits and human aspects, and what would I say? How would I react if I were this individual or that individual? Lot, good night. He wasn't a bad guy. What would you do? How would you respond? I would love to say I'd grab my spear and stand up at the gate. But when it comes down to it, I'm sitting out here hiding out in nowhere, Oklahoma, and struggling with my own questions and doubts and concerns. And at the end of the day, I love it. I've heard this from so many great people. Your show, this interview is called
Superheroes for the Messianic Lifestyle.
And I've heard this from so many of the heroes in my life. Those that have influenced me the most is, at the end of the day, Chris, though God were to slay me, I would still believe. I don't care whether I'm a Christian, a Jew, a Messianic, Muslim, or a Hindu. At the end of the day, I am chasing God with the best of my abilities, with all that I know, and there is a bombardment of garbage on the internet, on every place I go. It's hard to figure out, where is the truth? Well, it's a feeling I get. Sorry, I felt like I loved little Cindy Lou in high school, and that didn't work out, did it? So you can't always go by a feeling.
I agree. And brother, this is why you and I will be friends until death do us part. It's a fact. I can't possibly imagine a division between the two of us. It never has been, never will, because we both see those issues the same. It makes no difference what the details are. Those issues don't change with us.
Yeah, and I love the details.
I do too.
I love getting into it and arguing finer points. That's why I love reading. Reading. I shouldn't say reading. You really need to have a teacher when you go through a lot of the Jewish writings. But I love reading the Zohar. I love studying Zohar. I love studying Talmud, and I've got the whole series, and I've got a couple of online things and online yeshivas that I'll study with. And some of it is like, oh, really? You guys are arguing over this? Seriously? I mean, it seems so minor and getting lost. I mean, okay, I can have a fire on Shabbat and I can warm up my food, but if I don't use the right resource to feed that fire and keep it going, then I'm violating the sparking of flame. But if I let the food heat up, or the type of food that I'm keeping warm or reheating, now I'm cooking, and I mean the minutia they go into, it just blows your mind. It's like, oh, you guys are wearing me out. Stop. But then I realized, Chris, I didn't give the Torah to the nations. And there's a reason I didn't give it to the nations. These guys will keep it. Yeah, they'll go off into some crazy mashugana stuff. But they preserved it so that now you can be fed and introduced to it. I'm like, okay, God, you got it. Mm-hmm. They're not totally wrong.
I agree. I do agree. They did preserve it so that we have it today. How can you deny that? Yeah. You can't. You can't. I'm so with you 100%. Wow. This has been great, brother. This has been really good. And so we were talking beforehand, you started off with Kashuak. I've had a couple of shows that you've been on for a period of time, and a couple of shows that you had with others, Frank, Leonard Newland, had their shows, and you were in and out there, but yet you've lasted through them no matter what the situation has been, even though sometimes we don't see most of them anymore, but so your commitment, brother, and you're at least making it work has always been actually your integrity is always intact with me, my friend. No matter what, it's always intact. And so
I'm humbled by that, because we all have our own problems. The wife and I argue, the kids do crazy stupid stuff, things at work, things with people, friends, and those that you consider your greatest friends. Things happen, and that's part of life. And just when everything starts going good is when I start cringing, because I'm thinking, okay, don't get comfortable, Chris, because God's got something else He wants to teach you.
That's true. That's
You're not there yet. And it really is a roller coaster of a ride. I'm only about half your age, Mark, which means I'm in my my mid to late 50s.
Uh, uh, I think your math and mine might be a little bit different there, brother. I'm 64, so this is platinum blonde, by
Oh
the way.
yeah,
This is not.
and you know, it was just, in fact, it was just Friday night. I don't know how the subject came up. There's always some subject at the dinner table on Friday nights, and I was trying to explain, and you know me. You what did you do? You started the show by asking me one question, and I talk the whole rest of the time. I can't help myself.
It's history. It's
yeah.
history.
So one of the boys asked something, and I start going through the different stages of life with him, of the 8th day, and then why a bar mitzvah, why 13, and it's not a chronological thing. It is a maturity thing. The first half of your life, your body has been in complete and absolute control. You were born, you were made out of mud. God breathed his spirit into you. But that was Adam, not you. You were born. And so for the first couple of years of your life, the only thing you know is your mother from here to here. You know, I mean, that's all you know is feed me, hug me, comfort me, and change my diaper. And so you're focused on the flesh. And the flesh has so much power and so much control until about the age where you start realizing there's something else going on. There's something else that affects life, and I can't put my finger on it. And that's when Judaism comes in and grabs you and says, we're going to teach you the Torah because this is spiritual. Your animal soul has had complete control. Now your spirit is waking up. And that's why teenagers go through hell and back and cause hell on their parents, is because their spirit is waking up and there's a fight inside. And then you get married and the spirit starts to mold and change and shift a little bit. And you give the spirit a little bit more control. And you're starting to put the bridle in the mouth, the bit in the mouth, to start controlling the flesh now. And then you reach your 30s and you have children, and then 40s, and now 50s. And at 50, you're going, what did I do with my life? I've got more behind me than I have in front of me. What was it that I was supposed to learn again, God? And so now you see a different change going on in your life in the 50s, and then the 60s, and now you're in the 60s and 70s, and it's like the body is breaking down on me. The body's reverting back to it needs, but the soul is so alive now. The spirit is in so much better position to take control. And then before you know it, there's another change coming. Now, I didn't mean for this to turn into a teaching. It's just I'm trying to explain to my children, and they're going, yeah, you just passed us, Dad. Where's the dessert again, Mom?
Right.
So those are our Sabbath table dinner.
I get you, brother. I'm with you. Well, this has been precious, brother. This is very, very good. It's good to spend some time with you. Chris Matthews has done the 2.5 Opinions show for over 2 years. I looked at that, and it's about 2 years and 8 months that you guys have been doing that. And yes, it's been on and off in different times, but for the most of that time it's been on. And right now we're going through that transitioning, and we're looking for you guys to do video after the first of the year. Now I know I'm talking to Frank, and Frank's like, I gotta get a camera here, you know. But
you know what we say? We have a face for radio.
Yeah, that's right. It's okay. We're gonna make it happen. We're gonna make it work. And anyway, brother, I love you so much. Please say hi to Pam and the kids, and especially Josh. miss Josh from time to time. You know, Josh and I had a special relationship, and I want to one last thing I want to bring to your remembrance. You remember I used to do the last day of Sukkot from the stage. We did, Chris and I did the B'nai Shalom Lion Lamb Sukkot at Chandler, Oklahoma, and 1,000+ people inside of a tent that held 1,000+ people with a 40 by 80 foot stage with the big screen. And we used to do amateur night on the very last night, Simchat Torah. And I'm gonna tell you what, anything I could do to outdo the year before was always there. And I can't remember if it was the first year or the second year that we did this, but I talked to Chris, and I can't remember who else, but I talked you into riding your motorcycles. We had the stage, and we had an opening on both sides of the tent. You can imagine 1,000 people out. There wasn't that many by then, but there was openings on both sides, and I talked Chris and somebody else into bringing their motorcycles into the front and going back and forth. You remember that, Chris? Big old hogs, man.
Craig Dahl. That's who that was. It was Craig Dahl and I.
Craig Dahl and you. That's exactly right. And riding kosher hogs is
kosher hogs. And they'd put down like a outdoor carpet or an outdoor something, right. and we felt so bad afterwards because riding our bikes and then turning around a couple of times, we burned ruts.
It was the last night, and they throw that carpet away afterwards anyway, so it didn't make any difference. But it was
well,
so good.
Mark, before we sign off, I had a chance to run into Monty. We went down to a wedding. I don't know if you remember Alyssa. She got remarried. She's doing very well, and Monty was there, and that was it was so nice to be able to see Monty after all these years, and a flood of memories came through all of us, and we miss Lynn, and it was nice to see that he was able to make it down there in the condition that he's in, and then he left a little bit early, but that was understandable. But it was just the flood of memories came all over again. Those were good days and good times.
They really were, and oh my gosh, you and I both we got some real good base understanding and learning from those days and those years that we were all a part of that. And I mean, stuff that I still think of today. So brother, I miss you. I miss being with you physically and with your family, and we hope to see you soon in the family. So please say hi to everybody. I love you, brother. Big time.
Love you too, Mark. And we miss you and your wife, and that girl of yours. I haven't seen her in years either, and keep on.
She's not far. She's not far from you. She's closer to you than me.
I know. We keep on trying to find an excuse to go look them up and see the kids, and it was just transitions. Life transitions, the transitions of life, and just love it.
Amen.
Just love it.
All right. Well, Chris Matthews, everybody, with 2.5 Opinions broadcast. Chris, this has been great, brother. We'll talk to you real soon.
Okay.